OnlyFans passed $2.5 billion in revenue. Luther Seminary in South Minneapolis hosted a Beyonce Mass. In New Hampshire, Brian Nugent, who is literally an obese Asian man, Kate here. Welcome back to episode 2 of Sanity Check on the Trenches. I'm so glad if you showed back up because we have lots to discuss today because OnlyFans passed $2.5 billion in revenue. A Lutheran church in Minneapolis has a Beyonce Mass, and I promise you it's as crazy as it sounds. And a Kansas City high school chooses a man as their homecoming queen over 4 qualified and very beautiful young women. We will dive between the headlines to discuss the sinister origins of second-wave militant feminism. So let's go back to how this more radical branch of militant feminism began, or rather, where it was co-opted and hijacked by ill-intentioned perps. So for a long time, the Christian conservative movement has had their heads in the sand when it comes to the true intentions of feminism. They claim that only recently feminism has become sour and unproductive for women. Oh, I love first and second wave, but I don't like this new version. We literally hear this all the time. I'm a traditional feminist. I love equality. I'm a first wave feminist. Because the average person today was taught to believe that feminism was and only has been about equality. They have not made the connection between the simultaneous rise of feminism and the complete destruction of American culture by way of decay and fraying of the nuclear family strength. Feminism is deeply to blame for why our Christian family-centric culture is so weak today. Feminism has every intention of ushering in degeneracy and full-on government control. And largely, they've been really successful at accomplishing those goals. The second wave of feminism was roughly between the late 1950s and 1980s. This type of feminism was born out of the intellectual classes and permeated through academia right as more women actually began attending higher education. It also grew to be much more militant and strategic and sinister than the versions before. Second wave feminists had the intentional goals of destroying the family and what they deemed to be the patriarchy. The product of intellectualized feminism today is best depicted in this screenshot from a TikTok with a bug-eyed woman that says, this is just like so wild to me. When you went into your women's gender studies class every day without doing the reading, but always got the answers right by tying it back to how men were the root of every problem. First of all, she looks kind of crazy. So she's definitely the type that would like go after a women in gender studies degree. But the fact that she admits that all this is an institutionalized way in trying to blame men for all problems and it's a legitimized degree, like that's a problem. Feminism in academia has become solely a wedge between men and women, and largely they use revisionist history to make that case. Kate Millett, who is one of the major thinkers and activists in the second wave, said the revolutionary or utopian goal of feminism was to destroy the family. At least she's being honest. Kate Millett was an extremely radical, life-hating, and very sexually perverse woman who tried to open the bounds of sexual behavior to the point where she tried to even lure her own sister, Mallory Millett, to bed with her. Mallory Millett, who was closely tied to the more top thinkers behind the pushing of the second wave of feminism, she actually devoted her life to sharing the truth about where feminism was heading. And so this is like super shocking. The EPBC reports that Mallory Millett, who is Kate Millett's sister, has been telling the story of the 12 women that Kate brought together in New York City in the late 1960s and early 70s. And these are the women who laid the groundwork for the second wave of feminism. So for context, they used to get together for these like secret girl meetings and very, very childlike, no boys allowed, talking about how they would destroy culture, essentially. So before the meetings began, the women who met would recite essentially an Apostles' Creed of feminism to proclaim what they believed so they could start their ceremony in a correct way. One woman would lead and the others would respond or follow along in very religious fashion. I'm going to bring you through this chant because this is really important for understanding the intentionality of second-wave feminism. Why are we here today? The chairwoman would ask. To make revolution, they answered. What kind of revolution? She would reply. The cultural revolution, they would respond back. How do we make a cultural revolution? She demanded. By destroying the American family, they would answer. How do we destroy the family? She would come back. They would say, by destroying the American patriarch. They would all cry exuberantly and start to get their hands and their tambourines involved. How do we destroy the American patriarch? The leader would probe. By taking away his power. How do we do that? By destroying monogamy. They would shout in response. How do we destroy monogamy? Here's the kicker. By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, abortion, and homosexuality, they would resound. And that was the end of their chant. So, as someone who is Christian, looking at that, I say, well, promoting promiscuity, eroticism, and homosexuality, well, since these are the stated intentions and goals of the influential feminist thinkers in the 60s and 70s, that sounds an awful lot like what our culture is suffering from today. I mean, all of those things have been largely and widely accepted in our culture. They're not ideals that are part of the traditional American culture in the slightest. In fact, it's a complete rejection of traditional morals at all, in favor of complete debauchery and indulgence. So it would be silly to argue that the feminists have not accomplished many of their stated goals today. Both men and women are deeply promiscuous and engage frequently in meaningless, loveless hookups as a form of empowerment. I mean, look at the state of dating apps today. Our culture is extremely erotic, beyond control. We have pornography, social media thoughts, movies feeding us soft and hardcore porn from every angle. On platforms like OnlyFans, as we talked about earlier, has women campaigning for them, claiming that it is real work, it is empowering, and sex work is real work. We all know that is running rampant through chemical means, and also 40% of customers are repeat customers. And finally, every other guy is seemingly now kinda gay. And that's just a problem. These accomplishments were achieved with very specific programming and targeting, and it would be idiotic and naive to refuse to see the sinister effects of this branch of second-wave feminism today. The feminism intentionally derails tradition, derails morality, and ordered living. That much is extremely clear. And if you refuse to see it now, I really don't know what to tell you. I mean, I was just reading back the words that they would scream out. So don't be tricked by the messaging of feminism, because its deliverables are less than honorable. Don't be tricked into thinking, well, feminism is just about equality, and it's just about women not being objectified. We all know that's not true. So feminism is not all just sunshine and rainbows and hot pink Barbie girl boss culture. It's an extremely dark and pervasive ideology that seeks to promote godless values and turn culture into a cesspool of hedonic sludge. So according to Axios, OnlyFans revenue was $2.5 billion in 2022. At the end of 2022, they made $2.5 billion in revenue. And closing out 2022, OnlyFans itself as a company was valued at $12.5 billion. It's worth noting that out of 195 countries in the world, there are pretty much like 30 that have a GDP that's less than 12.5 billion. So OnlyFans as a company is currently worth more than over 30 different countries. And as the company grows in revenue, we will see so many effects from this. Consider this an exhaustive list of how we will see this form of pay-per-view affect our society. Men will continue to fall into complacency and passivity. Normal waiting for marriage relationships will become 1% of relationships, if not less. Men won't pursue women. Women will become saddened and depressed and turn to feminism for comfort because no men are chasing after them. Because if you could just pay someone to be around, then why do you have to chase a girl? Our society will become even more confused about sexuality. And of course, demand for nudity in movies and shows and social media will increase exponentially. The supply of nudity will also go up. Women will begin associating stripping for their iPhone back camera as to an IV injection of approval, which is something that lots of women are already addicted to. And women will continually be addicted to the dopamine and the paycheck that they get from OnlyFans. Women inevitably will be on more birth control because they're engaging in more sexual activity. More women will have as a result of that. Cheating will no longer include watching or subscribing to an OnlyFans model. That will essentially become commonplace in normal relationship activities, and you'll just have to accept that your husband has a chick on the side at all times. And feminists are going to continue to die on the hill of legitimizing OnlyFans as a career worthy of honor and respect. Sex work is real work, they're going to continue to claim. Divorce that is due to sexual dissatisfaction will increase, and then inevitably marriages that last will decrease. You'll just have less marriages that last. So no matter what way you look at this, every dollar that is gained by OnlyFans is pretty much another fracture in the great American society that we claim to have. A church called Lutheran Seminary in South Minneapolis hosted a Beyonce Mass at the Plymouth Congregational Church. I'm so curious. Let's see what this sounds like.
This is the love of God. I don't know what your vision of the church is, but we have decided that no matter your race, your age, your gender, no matter who you love, you are the thing that God had in mind when she looked out over the world and said, it is good.
First of all, let's just talk theology for a second. It was not, well, obviously God's not a woman. I don't even think I have to argue that. But God looked out on creation broadly and said it is good, not individual people, especially those who are actively sinning against him.
So we don't do Frozen Chosen here. This is not your grandma's church.
Clearly.
Understand this worship. You are welcome here.
Now that you're out of my life, I'm so much better. Thought that I'd be weak without you, but I'm stronger.
Okay. That's all I need to see. Of course, they refer to God as she or our mother, but in this case, it is confusing whether they mean God as God or Beyonce as God. Maybe they mean the same person. In fact, they are worshiping Beyonce at their Beyonce Mass. So that should be the first sign that you should run far, far away from this church immediately. But of course, it's egregiously blasphemous. It's a prime example of this womanist Marxist liberation theology that should be treated with as much disdain and contempt as you can muster. The first line, singing in their Beyonce Mass, is, now that you're out of my life, it's so much better. And it pretty much goes downhill from there. But here's the thing. With modern worship music, 9 times out of 10, worship songs are pretty synonymous with basic early 2000s romance pop songs. You hear no mention of Christ, of Jesus or God. You hear no mention of biblical themes or references. You pretty much only hear references to me and to my emotions and to my fulfillment and my dreams and how I'm showing up for God. For example, the song First Love by Carrie Job, her main lyric is essentially limited to, you're still my first love, you're still my only one. And then the bridge that is repeated 70,000 times during the song is, I feel my heart beating out of my chest, I want to stay forever like this. Let me ask you, is that a worship song? Or is that just another sappy pop romance song? It's really hard to tell. And as Christians, it really shouldn't be hard to tell. We shouldn't look so much like the world that our music sounds exactly like it, except with just a little bit more repetition. So certainly now our worship on Sunday mornings has become about the lights and the smoke show and all the moving parts. And in our modern culture, I have to say it's inevitable for things like Beyonce Mass to happen, because worship music now is worship of the self. It worships the individual. It worships hedonic lifestyles that do not honor God. We worship our own desires as a culture, our own lusts. And if music just happens to fit with venerating those things like Beyonce's music does, then what's the problem with playing it in church? And that's just an indictment on the state of the church today. Oh, we have seen this one too many times. Kansas City High School crowns male homecoming queen, rejecting 4 females. Oak Park City High School, Kansas City, Missouri, they had a homecoming and they got it down to the top 5 contestants, one of which, of course, was a dude who probably was not very popular in school. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it. And of course, predictably, the man ends up winning. This is a trend that we're not only seeing in high school homecoming, but we're also seeing around the world of pageantry. And for the guys, this might be very uninteresting because you're like, oh, pageantry is so silly. First of all, check yourself there. Pageantry is cool. Catalina Enriquez of Nevada was the first transgender Miss USA contestant. That happened, I believe, in 2021 or 2. In New Hampshire, Brian Nugent, who is literally an obese Asian man, won the Miss Greater Dairy of 2023 pageant. The Miss Netherlands crown was given to Ricky Coel in Leusden. Coel competed for the Miss Universe title in 2023. So we're obviously seeing men infiltrate women's pageants and things like homecoming that were historically girls only. And of course, this asks the question, how is this fair to women? A place where women can go to compete based off of their physical excellence, their poise, their strength, social abilities, and the like, are being infiltrated by delusional and woke men who demand a seat at the table every single time. So soon enough, men will be competing left and right and given titles that women have dreamed about for almost their whole lives. Because the judges are mostly made up of woke girlies and gay guys who want to promote transgenderism to the public. So where are the feminists? Where are the pageant queens? Where are the homecoming queens? Why are they not standing up against this? Why are they just rolling over and deciding, no, it's a kind thing to do. It's fine. Because how is this empowerment for women? Pageantry, homecoming queen, all of these institutions claim to be about women empowerment. And it's become so normalized for those who can afford such expensive surgeries and treatments and pastimes such as pageantry, because trust me, pageantry is not cheap. But they make themselves appear as women because they're affluent and can afford it. And that's bleeding down to the rural high school level in Missouri. And that should be really concerning. We should all be extremely concerned that people are not only given a pass to do this, but have the ability to in society. And of course, we know that this is just a greater symptom of the illness and the rot that our culture is facing every single day. That's where I'll leave it today. Thank you so much for being here. Please consider subscribing to The Trenches. Bo really wants you to. He also needs to buy a house. He told me not to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. He needs to buy a house. It would help him out a lot. But join us here next week, exact same time, exact same place, because we have so much more to discuss. But until next time, go make sure you live a beautiful life.